When I bought a new house, my husband said, "My parents will live here too. If you don't like it, you can leave." So, I sold the house and left. What happened next was truly shocking. I've been married to David for 5 years. At first, things were fine. Nothing extraordinary, but manageable. Over time, cracks started forming. 2 years ago, David quit his job to start a business. I supported him completely, believing in his vision, but it never took off. Instead, it drained our savings. I was left covering all the bills, rent, groceries, utilities, while he struggled. If finances were the only issue, maybe we could have worked things out, but the real problem was his family. David's mother and sister still lived in their family home, and every visit felt like entering enemy territory. They criticized everything I did, made me feel unwelcome, and constantly belittled me. It wasn't just occasional remarks. It was a relentless stream of judgment that wore me down. Despite having our own apartment just 10 minutes away, David insisted we visit them constantly. At first, I thought it was part of being a supportive wife. But the more I went, the worse their insults became. When I started standing up for myself, the situation escalated. And then there was the financial aspect. "Amanda, I need $500 for a friend's birthday gift. Can you lend me the money?" $500? What are you buying? A yacht? You're so cheap, Amanda. Doesn't David support you? You can't even do this small thing for your sister-in-law? I stared at her, stunned. Support me? I was the one paying for everything while David hadn't contributed a cent in over a year. And as for his sister, why didn't she get a job instead of relying on her mother? Before I could respond, David jumped in. "Amanda, just give her the $500. His mother beamed. "David, you're such a good son." Then his sister, looking like she'd been denied her favorite toy, added, "Can you give me $300 too? I need to buy something." David didn't even hesitate. Of course, Amanda has $300 in her purse. "Just take it." Like my hard-earned money was his to distribute. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, he said, "Thanks to me, we have a place to live." I just stared at him completely dumbfounded. Later, in the car, I couldn't hold it in. "Why do you act like you're some kind of provider when you don't even pay the bills?" He shrugged. "I have my pride as the eldest son." That set off another argument. "If you give them money once, they'll keep asking for more," I warned. "But making my mom happy isn't a bad thing," he defended. "David, we can't afford this. We're barely getting by, and you haven't contributed a cent. We need to save." From that moment on, all we did was fight. And then, one day, it hit me. Why was I even doing this? Why was I putting up with all of it? The final straw came when David said, "Hey, let's go to my mom's house." I didn't even look up. "Go by yourself." His expression darkened. "A wife is supposed to go with her husband." I shot him a look. "Oh, really? Then why don't you ever come with me when I visit my parents?" He clicked his tongue in annoyance and stormed out. Honestly, that weekend was the most peaceful I'd had in years. No overbearing mother-in-law. No entitled sister-in-law. Just peace. Quiet. Freedom. For the first time in ages, I had the space to think clearly. I spent the next 2 days focusing on something that actually mattered: my dream of owning my own home. I researched listings, ordered brochures, and spent hours envisioning how I'd decorate it, a space that was mine, free from judgment, free from people who drained me without appreciation. By the time David finally came home, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I was lighter, stronger, and more certain than ever. "Oh, you're back," I greeted him calmly. He ignored me, sulking like a child. It was pathetic. Shouldn't a grown man know how to act like an adult? I didn't engage. I simply turned and started making dinner, silently planning my next move. I was done waiting. It was time to take control of my life. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. "You've been way too defiant lately." I turned to him, taken aback. "Defiant? Just because I refused to visit your mom and sister?" "Yes," he replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A wife should obey her husband. "If you can't do that, maybe we should get a divorce." "Divorce?" I blinked, caught off guard. After all our arguments, I didn't expect him to throw that word around so casually. He leaned back, crossing his arms, an infuriating smirk on his face. "You don't want me to leave, do you?" He paused, clearly expecting me to panic, maybe even burst into tears. "Well, I'm really mad at you. I've already signed my part of the divorce papers." If you defy me again, I'll file them. Think carefully. With that, he turned and walked away, smugly adding, I'm taking a shower. Hurry up with dinner. The moment the water started running, I couldn't help but smile to myself. Oh, David, you have no idea. You just handed me the key to my freedom. I went into the kitchen and began preparing dinner, but this time, there was a lightness in my heart, a quiet joy bubbled up inside me. For years, I had walked on eggshells, trying to keep the peace, hoping David would change. But this was the out I had been waiting for. From that day forward, I became laser-focused on saving every dollar I could. Every extra penny went straight into my personal account, a silent countdown to the life I had dreamed of. I lived frugally, avoiding unnecessary expenses, keeping my excitement hidden behind a calm, composed exterior. David never noticed. He was too wrapped up in his own sense of power, convinced I would crumble, that I would beg him to stay. I don't think he ever imagined I might be planning my escape. Months passed, and my plan unfolded seamlessly. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted to leave with something that symbolized my independence. So I bought a house, a real home, entirely mine, free from his influence. The only step left was moving out, and I would do it on my own terms. I started packing, but not all at once. Slowly, carefully, one box at a time, I sent my belongings to my parents' house under the guise of decluttering. They knew everything and had been my unwavering support throughout this process. Each step forward lightened the burden I had been carrying for so long. When the time finally came, David was away for the weekend, visiting his family. It was the perfect opportunity. That weekend, I packed up the last of my things, walked out of the apartment, and never looked back. That place hadn't been a home, it had been a cage. Now I was free. My new home was everything I had envisioned: bright, fresh, peaceful. The walls still smelled of new paint, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could truly breathe. I took my time unpacking, enjoying every moment of making the space my own. This was my victory. Every corner of the house represented a future without fear or manipulation. The quiet was comforting, and an overwhelming sense of relief washed over me. I didn't have to answer to him anymore. I didn't have to brace myself for his moods or deal with his controlling nature. I was in control now. That evening, as I placed the final touches around my home, my phone buzzed. David's name flashed across the screen. A small smirk played on my lips. I knew exactly why he was calling. Hey, where are you? His voice was sharp, demanding, as if he still had a right to an answer. Where do you think? I replied, my tone intentionally vague, letting him sit in the mystery for a moment. Don't play games with me. The apartment is empty. What the hell is going on? I let out a soft chuckle. I packed my bags and left. What? Why? I don't understand. His voice wavered, panic creeping in. I smiled to myself. Well, we're already divorced, so naturally, I moved out. A long silence followed. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked with disbelief. Divorced? Yes, I confirmed, a quiet pride in my tone. I filed the papers earlier today. As of now, we're complete strangers. I don't accept this. His words came out in a choked fury. Satisfaction surged through me. But you were the one who suggested we could get divorced any time. You said it yourself. And as a businessman, shouldn't you take responsibility for your words? I didn't wait for his response. The conversation was over. With that, everything was over. I hung up, my heart racing, not from fear, but from sheer relief. It was done. The final chapter had been written, and I had written it myself. That night I slept more soundly than I had in years. I hadn't realized how much weight I had been carrying until it was gone. Waking up in my own home, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Sleeping in my own bed felt like the reward I had long deserved. No more stress, no more arguments, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. No more dealing with his family, who treated me like an ATM. It was just me, finally, and completely free. The next morning felt surreal. I had invited my parents over for the first time since moving in, eager to share this fresh start with them. I spent the morning cooking, humming to myself, as the delicious aromas filled the kitchen. It was a small personal way to celebrate a moment I knew I'd cherish forever. When my parents arrived, my mom gasped, taking in the space. "This is incredible," she said, eyes wide with admiration. My dad smiled, his expression full of pride. "You did good, kid. We toasted to new beginnings, glasses of sparkling cider clinking together. It wasn't just a celebration of my home, it was a celebration of everything I had fought for, my independence, my peace. Laughter filled the room, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. We talked about everything and nothing, simply enjoying the moment, knowing I was finally where I was meant to be. Then, the doorbell rang. I frowned, confused. Who could that be? Curiosity led me to the intercom, and when I checked the screen, my stomach twisted. Standing outside were David, his mother, and his sister. "What are you doing here?" I asked, disbelief lacing my words. David smirked like he owned the place, standing there with his usual arrogance, as if he had every right to be here. His confidence was audacious, considering the circumstances. "We're moving in," he said, as casually as if he were asking for a glass of water. I blinked, struggling to process what I had just heard. "Excuse me?" I asked, unable to mask the disbelief in my voice. His mother, of course, chimed in, wearing the same smug expression she always had. "Your place is big enough for all of us," she stated matter-of-factly, as if this was the most logical thing in the world. "And my husband is in the hospital. When he's discharged, he'll be living here too. Now open the door." It was clear she didn't even grasp the absurdity of her request. To her, my home, my world, was simply theirs for the taking. I stared at them, trying to wrap my mind around the sheer audacity of the situation. Then, almost laughing in shock, I finally found my voice. "Are you out of your minds? Why would I let you in? Get off my property now." Her eyes widened in outrage as if I had just insulted her. "How dare you? You're being so rude. What's yours is ours. Open this door right now." Her entitlement rang through her voice, the same manipulative tone she had probably used her whole life. The only difference? This time someone was standing up to her. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I had fought too hard for my freedom to let them trample over it again. "I have no idea what you're talking about. In case you forgot, I'm single now," I said, keeping my voice firm, making it clear just how absurd this entire situation was. Her face twisted in confusion. She looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't grasp what I was saying. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her tone growing more aggressive by the second. I raised an eyebrow, my patience wearing thin. "Didn't your son tell you? We're divorced. We're complete strangers now." Saying those words felt empowering. I wasn't backing down this time. A tense silence filled the air. David's mother and sister turned to him, their eyes demanding an explanation. He stammered, searching for words, but it didn't matter. I had already made up my mind. "None of you are welcome here," I said firmly, cutting through the tension. "Please leave." I didn't wait for a response. I pressed the button shutting off the intercom. Conversation over. David reacted immediately, pounding on the door, his fist slamming against the wood in frustration. "Open up. We need to talk." His panic was evident, but I stood firm. The power was in my hands now. Then something outside caught my eye, flashing red and blue lights reflecting off my window. My heart skipped a beat. I looked out and saw a police car pulling up in front of my house. For the first time in years, I felt a wave of relief. I stepped back as officers approached, their presence cutting through the chaos David and his family were creating. Within moments, they had him restrained, cuffed, and ready to be taken away. I watched, feeling the tension drain from my body. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. Finally, peace. Finally, freedom. David's voice broke through the night. "Why are you doing this to me?" he shouted, his tone desperate yet empty, like a plea no one cared to answer. His mother and sister stood frozen, their shock apparent. The officers didn't arrest them, but they firmly directed them away, making it clear they were no longer welcome. I stepped outside, still processing everything that had just unfolded. Then I noticed my dad standing off to the side, calm as always, arms crossed, watching with quiet confidence. He gave me a peace sign, grinning like this was just another day. "In situations like this, always call the police," he said casually, like he was teaching me the basics of self-preservation. I laughed, a mix of relief and gratitude swelling in my chest. "I love you, Dad," I said sincerely. We went back inside, picking up our celebration with a renewed energy. The tension had lifted, replaced by the clinking of glasses and genuine laughter. It felt like a true new beginning, like I could finally breathe. Later that night, I learned the full extent of David's actions. He had been stalking me, following me from work, waiting until I got home, planning when to make his move. When he admitted it to the police, they didn't take it lightly. They made it clear, if he ever showed up again, they would arrest him immediately. But I wasn't worried. I knew David too well. He was a coward, and after today he wouldn't dare risk another confrontation. Just to be safe, I filed for a restraining order, not just against him but his entire family. It was time to cut all ties for good. As for David, his life quickly fell apart after the divorce. His business, which had depended heavily on my financial support, began to collapse. Without my money to keep them afloat, his family struggled to pay their bills. With his father still in the hospital, their situation only got worse. Eventually, they had no choice but to sell their house. Karma had finally caught up with them, and I couldn't deny a small sense of satisfaction. For me, life is better than ever. Inviting my parents to move in was an easy decision, one I never second-guessed. Having them here filled my home with a warmth I hadn't realized I was missing. They never stopped reminding me how proud they were, how lucky they felt to have me as their daughter. That kind of love and affirmation made every struggle worth it. Now, we're happy, content, and at peace. The house feels different, alive with laughter, shared meals, and the small moments that make each day special. I found my way back to where I truly belong, where love and support turn this house into a real home. I know challenges will come as my parents get older, but I'm ready for them. I want to be there for them, just as they were for me, offering not just care but the same emotional support they've always given me, whether it's managing their appointments, making sure they have everything they need, or simply sitting with them when they feel lonely. I'll be their steady presence. I'll listen to their stories with patience and give them the time and attention they deserve. And when life gets tough, I'll be the one to lift them up just like they did for me. This is my chance to show them how much they mean to me, how deeply I appreciate everything they've done. Every moment matters. The stories, the laughter, the quiet afternoons together. Time moves fast, but I'm determined to cherish every second. For the first time in a long time, I feel truly at home, and nothing, no one, will ever take that away. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.